Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of That's Insane with Aja. I'm happy you're here. I know that and I say we because you guys have been with me through this entire ordeal, have been going through the runaround as it relates to my page. So in order to combat TikTok trying to silence me and doing the most free content ever, I decided to just come over and try to give you guys at least a YouTube video every day. So there is a topic that is much anticipated whenever I go live. Everybody's asking questions. There's a little bit of confusion. So what better time than now to talk about the Anunnaki and who the Anunnaki are? So that is what we'll be talking about today. Again, if you could, I will put my Patreon. Yes, I made a Patreon for you guys. I will put my Patreon in the description. And you guys feel free to donate. As you know, I have been demonetized. Yes, demonetized twice in a week because, getting banned is still getting demonetized. So, and as far as giving an update on that, I have heard nothing. I have heard absolutely nothing from TikTok. But I keep getting emails from sample companies, and my email is connected to my old account. So that's annoying. But yeah, let's get into much anticipated, the Anunnaki. So again, excuse my raspiness. So I'm gonna explain it to you as detailed as possible and make sure I hit every corner, because the next video after this will directly correlate to this video, and I get into the genetic makeup side, like my side of the story per se, what I gathered from reading all the information of the Anunnaki. So let's start with, who are the Anunnaki? Who are they? Where do they come from? Who made them? Whatever. So if you are unfamiliar with ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Meso, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Akkadians, they are from a specific period of time that was extremely advanced, you guys. So ancient Meso is like the largest ancient civilization that we know of. It is said that they had over 65,000 people in this one city. So the Anunnaki are who they worshipped, and a lot of people don't understand that ancient Mesopotamia did operate within a city, and then they had people on the outskirts of this city, right? And this all ties into their gods, what they believed in, and it's going to go deeper into what I feel is going on in today's date and age. Now, ancient Meso had things like cuneiform text, right? Script. They had the first ever script, right? And this was a developed set of writing. This was not just random writings on the wall. These were tablets. There were 14 tablets that had this script that translated for everybody. Ancient Egypt, it translated for the Greeks. Everybody used it. And a lot of people don't know that ancient Mesopotamia was where a lot of the zodiacs originated. They are why we go down to 7 days of the week, because each 7 day was derived from a certain god of ancient Mesopotamia. And they had a 60 metric system. So they came up with 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and 360 degrees in a circle. This is ancient Mesopotamia. It's old. So unfortunately, when people think oldest and think most ancient, they think Egypt and Greek mythology. Ancient Mesopotamia was before them, okay? And they came up with, the writing system. Ancient Meso came up with the wheel. They had a very high-tech irrigation system. They had crops. They were an amazing civilization. They had kings, queens. They had these things called ziggurats, which were these temples where they would worship these Anunnaki gods. So the next time someone argues with you about ancient Egypt, just pull up ancient Mesopotamia. Way cooler, more modern. They had more gold, you guys. They had these stones that you wouldn't even imagine existed. One of the most prominent and the most massive, you guys, one of the most massive collections of ancient jewelry and stones came from Mesopotamia. And this excavation had gold. When I talk about stones, I'm thinking like carnelian, things of that nature. So that's just a brief rundown of ancient Mesopotamia, which is where these Anunnaki gods come from. Okay? I know, like, Aja, we're supposed to be talking about ancient Mesopotamia. We're not supposed to be talking about ancient Mesopotamia as it relates to the Anunnaki. So, the Anunnaki and ancient Mesopotamia emerged around 4,000 to 5,000 BC. Okay? And there were these 14 tablets. And I'm just reading my notes. These are my notes. Because when I read information, I summarize. So I always read and I study and I have notes. So don't worry, this is still my information. So there were these 14 clay tablets that had the story of the Anunnaki and this planet Nibiru, right? So Nibiru was a planet that was said to return every 3,600 years. And Nibiru only orbited near Earth in these years, right? Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse. So the Anunnaki, according to ancient Sumerian texts, were said to have come from Nibiru. And Nibiru was dying, right? Their atmosphere was polluted. There was just these circumstances that these Anunnaki could not inhabit Nibiru for long, so they came to Earth for resources. Ooh. And this is, again, this is what we are told about the Anunnaki, right? And this is what the Anunnaki told, I guess, the civilization that they would have had to create, because there are some inconsistencies with their story. Because the Anunnaki tell it as they came to Earth, right? This is the story they are telling a human, right? That they're putting on these 14 tablets. They told the humans that they were, said to create in these tablets from ancient Mesopotamia, that they came here from Nibiru because they needed resources for alchemy, okay? And these resources were gold. They needed gold to create alchemy, to do alchemy, because gold was the only thing that could help their atmosphere, right? So, and they needed it because gold could stop cosmic radiation. I know. What the heck are they talking about? So they needed these beings, right, to mine the gold. They brought their own form of slave here called the Igu, or the Igi. It's Ig, the Igi. And when they brought them here, the Igi rebelled, fought back, and the Anunnaki wiped them out. So they had to experiment with genetic mutation to create the Homo sapien, which would be us. So the Anunnaki, this is what the Anunnaki is telling us, and this is what they put in those 14 tablets, that they had to create us. And they only created us to basically be slaves, mine gold, to take back to their planet Nibiru, right? And what doesn't make sense to me, but I know because it makes sense to me, is how are we getting this information? Where is this information about the Anunnaki coming from? It's coming from the people who've had the information on the Anunnaki all this time. And when I get into the rest of the story, you're going to see how that kind of blurs the line of what is true and what they want us to believe is true. The same way that the Anunnaki wanted these Homo sapiens to believe that they came here from another planet and needed these things that they created, which would be the Homo sapien, to mine gold, right? Because they also told humans that when they got here, there was nothing here but animals. So, right, the Anunnaki are telling us, well, they're telling these people who are putting it in text that they came here. They're telling the story like, yeah, we came here and we needed humans to mine gold. So that's all you're here to do. And this is what the purpose they gave humans. And they also said that when they got here, it was nothing but mammoths here. And they tried to use mammoths to experiment on. And they ended up creating these ghastly creatures. And they created things like the Nephilim. But the Nephilim were dumb, right? The Nephilim were stupid. They were massive and they lacked self-control. That is what the Anunnaki said about the Nephilim. But we all know that that can't be the truth. So after they do all this, right, the Anunnaki have a certain set of people, right? And it all, no matter how many times they read in ancient Mesopotamia about the Anunnaki and who the gods are, they always come down to eight specific deities that are always there, even though we don't know the amount or set number of Anunnaki. And I'm going to bring it modern day for a second because we're in the year of the 8. So if these gods came here and there were 8 of them, and it was every 3,600 years that this planet Nabaru came closer to the earth, and they come here to, I guess, what in their sense, collect resources for their planet, wouldn't it be this year, the year of the 8th, that they're supposed to be supposedly coming back? Okay. And they left the ziggurats, which are these, in their version of skyscrapers, the giant temples that were said to be left behind so that the Anunnaki could leave their history so that people would know how to help them get back to Earth, and they would know the preservation of the pure Anunnaki genetics and how to keep the Anunnaki genetics pure on Earth and away from people, regular people who are just here as prisoners to mine gold for them. So the Anunnaki had different gods. So I have to sneeze. Okay, sorry. Excuse me. I need hand sanitizer. Hold on. That's the thing about YouTube. It's not like TikTok. You can't really cut stuff out. I'm not going to cut stuff out. I don't really care. Where were we? So, yes, the Anunnaki had this idea of slave labor. And let's get into their lineage, right? So the Anunnaki were said to come from Anu and Kai. And Anu was the biggest Anunnaki, if you will. He was the sky god. He was the one who represented heaven. And then you had Ki, who was the wife. And Anu and Ki created sons, Anunnaki. And their son's job was to come here to Earth to conduct all their business on Earth. And they stayed up in Nabaru, or the heavens, right? It's unclear. Did they come from heaven or did they come from Nabaru? I think they messed up their own lie with that one. So their sons were Enlil and Enkai. Enlil and Enkai. And it's funny because Enlil and Enkai actually fought over the human race. So be it. And Enlil and Enkai were in charge of the slave race, humans, the Homo sapien. They were in charge of generating labor, and they were the ones who were mutating genes and came up with the human 1.0, which was called Adamu, A-D-A-M-U, Adam-U, like Adam, right? And when they started, they had this place, Enlil and Enkai, where they created the first human 1.0, where they kept them all, and it was called Eden. And they kept all of them in Eden, and when they did this, they told humans, you can fornicate, but you just don't reproduce a lot. And so when they reproduced too much, they were kicked out of Eden, and they had to go out into the outskirts to continue to be slaves, right? They got ahead of themselves. So one thing that the Anunnaki did, they presented themselves to ancient Mesopotamia as immortal. And they were able to present themselves as immortal by continuously reproducing their lineage and using alchemy to preserve their bloodline. So when they did this, they had these long genes that, of course, outlived humans so they could appear immortal. So one thing that they also told humans was that we will not give you these genes. They told humans, you do not have these genes. They don't represent your purpose. Your purpose is to be a slave, mine resources. You don't need intelligence. And they limited the intelligent capacity of humans on purpose. They disrupted our gene makeup so that even though we were made from them and they mated with us and created cyclopses and things of that nature, they made sure that they modified our lineage so that we could only be of use in slavery and we could not reproduce the long lineage of the Anunnaki and have immortality. So basically, in summary, because there's a whole worship and there's an etymology of the Anunnaki, but in summary, the Anunnaki only made humans to mine gold. That's all they wanted. They wanted to enslave us, right? So one thing let's get into my synopsis of it, because I've read a lot of the Anunnaki. My synopsis is that the Anunnaki, in fact, did not come from another planet. If you know anything about fallen angels, is what I believe they are, just fallen angels, angels that fell from heaven and came and presented themselves to mankind with this great elaborate story so that mankind could worship them. And they needed gold to be able to, they needed alchemy to be able to stay on earth, right? So they wouldn't go to the underworld and die off, essentially. So when you get into what the Anunnaki told humans, you have to understand that the Anunnaki also told humans that they would return and that there were specific instructions onto how to preserve the lineage of the Anunnaki and not to give it to humans. And this is what I keep telling people, is that we think that people and politicians are the same. Politicians are politicians and they have a specific lineage. This is what I believe is the lineage that has been preserved through the Anunnaki, right? Because we all know that politicians have secrets. They have information that we don't have because their lineage had access to the information first, and that's how they were able to manipulate and come into power, is because they have access to this technology, is what people call it. But it's just regular information that has been here for decades, like the ancient Egyptian gods that came after the Anunnaki were able to possess the information, because the great deluge or the flood also happened to ancient Samaria, and ancient Samaria made it seem as if this flood did not come from God, that this flood was because humans got too boisterous, too bold, too grandiose, right? So there is this common theme of another entity that the Anunnaki or the ancient Egyptian gods or fallen angels answer to. And in my mind, that is just God in the 10th heaven. And they have fallen to earth and tried to preserve their lineage through humans and through a specific bloodline of the politicians, because ancient Meso had politicians. Each city-state have had a Anunnaki god that governed them, that determined their fate, just like politicians. So I'm not gonna overwhelm you in this first segment, because this is a segment. So we will go over this in the next segment. Just want to say thank you guys for the support. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the love. Thank you for following me over through this transition, because I feel it is a transition and I will never forget you guys. And we will go and we will make it together. Denounce the Gene is live. It is a movement, and we are moving towards understanding that we as humans have rights, okay? So again, thank you for coming to another episode of That's Insane with Aja, and I hope to see you again. Bye, guys.